Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Buckle up, baby. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. Soren Kierkegaard. Our guest today, a regular on the Culture Matters podcast. If you've been part of the journey, season 1, episode 12. Wow.
Long time ago, man.
Oh my God. Season 14, episode 162, episode 452. Our guest today participated last year in the New Year's Eve Jubilee before it was really even the Jubilee. We go back to New Year's Eve 2016. The real culture happened that night on the dance floor. They've been an advisor to their clients since they left school, coming from an engineering background into more of a finance background. Today, they've been working with businesses for years around the types of hedges, let's say insurance, understanding risk, thinking steps ahead, protecting assets, making sure businesses are more successful in the natural blind spots they develop as they grow, things that might not be, that may be taken for granted. Our guest today, Anthony Mirarchi, helps his clients, his people, his partners succeed at the highest level in their businesses and has been putting up with me for years.
Been a pleasure, baby.
Thanks for coming back to the podcast. This quote hit me over the head with like a two by four because as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of entrepreneurs listening. This part about painful state of being, remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have. Like I take it as like, oh, there's all these things that can happen in 2025. Negative, positive, that may never happen. And I can easily put myself in a anxious state. Oh, I didn't sleep last night because of this or because of that around the business. So, yeah, I'm curious your thoughts on that as an entrepreneur, as an advisor to your clients. What's the importance of staying the steady hand or because you've always exuded that like calm, collected, focused on the
Stay the
task.
course. Stay the course. Back to the quote. I guess the worst thing is regret, right? That's I guess the best word to summarize that is probably regret. The memory of not having, what you can have in the future, not having that, right? Remembering that. That's probably every entrepreneur's worst nightmare, right? Regretting stuff that you should have did. You didn't try it, you didn't pursue that, you didn't, you know, follow through on this or follow through on that. It's probably one of the it's a very it's a scary quote. I guess. It's a square we were talking
He
about
was a scary man, that
scary
guy,
quote. It's a
Kierkegaard.
scary
Yeah.
quote because that's it. That is a nightmare for a lot of I guess people that are doing their own thing. Call them entrepreneurs. Call them yeah, whatever you want to call them. Self-driven people, whatever. But that is kind of nightmarish though.
Funny anecdote on him. He would publish one year. He published 4 books, I believe, in the same year, all at the same time, all under different pseudonyms. So
Why?
nobody knew who, and each pseudonym had a meaning. Like one, like each name of the author had a different meaning. Why? He was just unbelievable, out of his gourd, out of his mind,
Yeah.
reacting
But
to.
here we are talking about him, so maybe he had something right, I guess.
Oh man, I admire his work greatly. And like did you have doubt early in your career, from people, even if it was like third party, like or did you feel that there was doubt, there was doubters, there was naysayers, there was
Man,
critiques?
listen, I'm sure it existed. I don't know if I ever was the receiver of somebody directly saying it. You know what I mean? Like I have my what do they tell you like in business and stuff like, or even just gaining any kind of success, whether it's personally, professionally, whatever it might be. But you got to surround yourself with the right people. So if you're getting a lot of naysayers and you're getting a lot of that, you probably got the wrong people around you, I would imagine.
Hmm.
So I didn't witness a lot of that personally. Like, people telling me to my face. I'm sure there's always somebody in Italian, they call it the malocchia. It's the evil eye.
Oh
So
wow.
I'm sure people had it on me. People are envious and jealous oh, look, he's trying to do his own thing. That exists. Jay, I'm sure people are doing it to you. Anybody that has any level of success or or trying to do anything for themselves is going to get that. Whether they're saying it to your face or not is one thing, but it's going to exist. I mean, like I said, people around me were, I still have a very good circle of people, very trusted, like conciliary, just to continue on with the Italian words, but
Yeah.
I have a lot of those people around me that are very supportive. They've been very supportive, see me through, if I needed help or whatever, they've assisted. Yeah, still helping. You know what I mean? I get when you never not in need of help, you know what I mean? But hopefully you need less of it as you go along. But my circle's been fairly small, but um very loyal. So I haven't really experienced a lot of that face to face, like, you know, just down talk, I guess.
Hmm.
And
I
that was designed purposely.
okay.
You're supposed to rid you. I guess it's just a good practice in general, just to rid your life of people that are negative energy. So you know
Separate the wheat from the chaff.
that's right. The wheat from the chaff. That's right.
You've got your flaming sword, Ant,
Yeah. So
unsheathed.
yeah. So so it's been a lot of good support, which you need.
I was re-listening to episode 450. I believe I just said I just got jumbled. 456, 452. I was re-listening to that this morning in preparation. I like to re-listen to the last ones.
What the one we did for New Year's?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
wow. New Year's Eve. So a year ago and change. It is it, well, and then that leaves another thought. It's like it's already been a month into the first year of 25.
Yeah.
So, I have to ask myself, how am I executing at the highest level of what I thought I would going into New Year's?
Mhm.
I do not believe so. I'm missing a couple
Yeah.
key performance indicators. It's amazing how time flies. My question though, I'll circle back there is when I was re-listening to the other one, do you have a word for 2024 that or if yeah, did you have one or if you didn't, do you have a
Um,
word that would represent 2024?
um, no, man, that's a good question, actually. I mean, there's a lot of words I guess I could utilize. I mean, um, listen, you always set goals for yourself, right? And what they say, you shoot for the sky, shoot for the moon. And hopefully, you get to the moon, reach for the stars, and hopefully hit the moon or something, whatever, however that goes. I mean, that's always if your goals are far enough out, even if you fall short a little bit, which you don't necessarily. I'm not condoning falling short, but if by reaching so far you fall a little bit short, and that is still a good win. I mean, it's a win. So you can't ever take away from that. You never want to. You shouldn't downplay wins, I guess. So 2024, we had wins.
Wow.
We had some losses, but we had some wins too that were good and significant. So am I happy about the losses? No. Am I happy about the wins? Yeah, I'm happy about them. Should there have been more? I think so, but um, you can't just constantly beat yourself up though. You know what I mean? Like you recognize where there are some shortfallings and hopefully you clean it up. they say do it for the new year. I mean, you start today. If you're finding a shortfalling now, you should be adjusting that now, not waiting until 2026 now to do that. You know what I mean? Like you got to be working on it now immediately. Um, so it was a year of um, okay, we hit some goals, we didn't meet some goals, but net we ended up better in 2023. So you know what I mean? So that's it's the right direction. It's not as uh listen, guys like us are aggressive people, right? You want things to go faster than the light. So, when that doesn't happen, you get frustrated and, you know, so it could have been better from that sense. Like the quick, the successes you want on a hockey scale chart on a hockey chart, right? Graph
Mhm.
growth like that. But you take the wins and you learn from the losses, and that's it. It's a year of learning, I guess. It's always a year of learning, I guess. You can say that.
Mm. What's sexy about your industry?
Um, Listen, insurance itself is a commodity, right? There's a million insurance people, insurance companies, insurance products. I think what makes it sexy is the delivery and the connection with the clients themselves, and how you relate to them. And I think that I've done well with that. And that's evidenced by, you know, responses from clients and what they've told me, even I mentioned like a big loss that we had, even in from that loss, they even reached out even afterwards to say it was literally nothing because of like what we did or our performance or anything like that. It was a numbers game. And, the kind words that were delivered to me, even after losing that, because we've had them as a client for a while. It turned into just they needed a little bit of relief. And, it was, there was things that were done by some other carriers that were a little questionable, but I'm not going to go there right now. Um, but the gratitude they gave me and the kind words they said about, what we've done for them over the years and all that stuff, it was really, that's another big win. And that's what makes it sexy. Finding true solutions for your clients, which is what we're all about. We're not about just, like just trying to sell a product off the shelf. It's really about like trying to understand the clients, what their problems are, and then delivering what they need. Not just giving them something that's off the shelf and, you know, maybe not necessarily what they're looking for. You know what I mean? So that's the sexy part about it, is the relationship with the clients and trying to figure out, what's going on and what their true needs are. And you know, if you can take it one step further, trying to, if you know their industry and where they're at, uh knowing their problems before they do. You know what I mean? Because maybe I've seen it. I've worked with a lot of we work a lot in healthcare. It's not the only industry we work in, but we have a niche in that space. So just having worked with so many physicians and medical practices and hospitals and surgical centers and this and that, like you understand some of the problems that they're probably going to see down the road a little bit, maybe before they do. So being able to impart some of that knowledge and some of that, little insight before they have to feel it themselves that's what makes
How
the
can the
industry.
right partner, you being a partner to that industry, how can you be a catalyst for a better culture, if at all? Like the relationship with,
How can I ask the question again?
like, does your relationship with your client in that space impact the culture at all in any way?
Um, does it impact their culture in their own
Yeah, like
organization?
let's say there was like a really bad partner they had and you're in the capacity of what you do. Could that really hurt the culture?
It's an interesting question. I think by having the right partners, I think you begin to learn. It's like any other relationship. When you have the right relationship, whether a wife, girlfriend, business partner, when you have the right ones, you start to understand what really matters, right? And I think that's the importance of good relationships. when you get into a partnership initially for the wrong reasons, you know, uh, maybe it's just financial. Maybe it's just they're blowing smoke up where the sun don't shine. You know what I mean? Like those might be the wrong reasons, and then you are probably most likely going to find that out, soon, and probably find out for a bad reason. You know what I mean? So, um, that probably I would imagine that shifts culture at some point because then you start to understand what the what good relationships to the organization mean. You know what I mean? So I would consider myself a good relationship, right? So you would start to appreciate those relationships more. You know what I mean? So yeah, so I think ultimately uh a good partnership, like I believe I deliver, like you will deliver. Sure, a lot of people you work with, they deliver to their clients. I think that is going to shift culture. I think I would have to imagine it would. It's almost impossible that it doesn't, I would think.
What are some of the big, I guess, how is the industry evolving and changing throughout, over the last 5 years or
Like
10
the
years?
insurance brokerage agency or
Yeah, yeah.
industry.
How is it changing? How is it evolving?
It's
What do
an
you
interesting
see?
question. It's an interesting question. There's a lot of aggregation. I think this is a common theme in all industries, to be honest. Like private equities, we've talked about this before, just like private equity and um what that's doing to industries in general, I think. I mean, we talked about it with healthcare,
Yeah.
but that's a big change. Um I'm not saying it's I'm not saying all of it, so I don't want to stereotype all private equity deals and all like what I've seen in like my very microscopic view of the industry or whatever, it makes it less personal. You know what I mean? Because they get bigger. Like private equity is about getting bigger, right? They're trying to aggregate things together, make them bigger. They want to resell it again, flip these things. So ultimately, it's just getting bigger, right? So
Mm.
when you get bigger, you lose that like personal touch. It just happens. It's just like you go to a company like Google, you're not going to have the same touch and feel as you are some like the IT service business down the street that you talk to, they call you on the phone. Like it's not going to be the same touch and feel, right? So I think that's like I think that's a big change, and I think I think it's unfortunate for a lot of industries. Actually, it's good for a lot of reasons, and it's bad for a
Could
lot.
there be a scenario where, yeah, third party comes in and they're in operating control and they're just looking at numbers, but numbers don't, and cutting costs, but numbers don't reflect a relationship or
Right.
the integrity of a vendor, or they don't, or right, all the past battles that were won.
Right.
And there's this old Chinese proverb I loved. It was like, good things are seldom cheap and cheap things are seldom good.
It's I think
Because there's goodwill built up
yeah.
in relationships. Now, at the same time, there could be a relationship that's very long term
All right.
where there's an entitlement built into it, or there's like, right, uh, it's kind of a
I
protected.
listen. I think in order to kind of bring that all together, I don't know if it. Some people listen. Some people are in businesses and they build them and they build them to sell them. All right, and that's okay. That's a good model. You know what I mean? So uh, private equity allows for that, and does is that value necessarily factored in there? I mean, I think it does because of your numbers. I think if you have I think if you have good relationships with your clients, I think your numbers are going to reflect that, right? And I think that impacts private equity. It impacts the purchase if they end up buying you and all that stuff. So, I mean, it is important. I guess those battles that were won and the relationships that you have, I guess ultimately they do matter because that's going to help the business grow. You know what I mean? Does private equity are
Yeah,
they
those battles
necessarily
create
are they
trust.
valuing that? I don't know if they necessarily value that. I think they're they look at numbers. That's what's important to them. You know what I mean? So we have a mutual friend of ours. We were just talking before we went live on this thing. And they talk about like the key performance, those KPIs and stuff like that. You know what I mean? That's what's important. That's what gauges ultimately the success of a business. You know what I mean? You can be the most personable person and you could be the most, whatever, outgoing and they love you. But if the business isn't doing anything with that and it's not growing and it's not thriving, all that it's almost irrelevant. You know what I mean? Like the next step is for the benefit of the business. Like you do these
Well,
things.
that's a good point, but that depends on other factors too, like what's happening in the world,
Right,
like looking at the numbers without listening to the people.
right. That's a, I mean,
True. Dude, I love when I scroll on the Instagram and I see the type of advice that and then if we put ourselves in that, like the type of advice that connotes like basically working for a tyrant. It's like, but would they want to work for themselves? Just a thought experiment, you know.
yeah, I mean,
Would they want to work for themselves?
yeah, it's a, I don't know. It's a good question. I mean, just back to the whole like private equity piece of this stuff, or yeah, I'm not picking on them, but just like, does that matter? Does the relationships matter? Is all that valuable? All that stuff. I mean, I there's a culture built into that, right? If they continue that and they still value that, and they, the concern is once they take it over and things get too big, does that continue? That's always the danger. Does that, or is it just about numbers at that point? It's just, you know, keep bringing in salespeople, crank it out, get more, like,
If
are they
things are just about numbers, they'll work for some time, but they won't work long time.
right, right, wrong term,
Like
right?
yeah, like Warren Buffett. We met one of the recent acquisitions privately at Berkshire last year,
Yeah,
just sitting at a bar, and he was just turned 66 and had just sold at 64 to Warren after 40 years of being the CEO.
all right,
Hundreds and hundreds of employees, a tremendous organization you've never heard of. And Warren bought this guy and the business. He bought the business and this guy. And the guy
right,
was like so excited about 30 more years of work. And he actually, I won't share the conversation or who, uh, out of respect, but he actually said a lot of things that ended up like what his whole bullishness on the economy and all these things, his energy, I tell you, he had more energy than me. Like by orders of magnitude.
wow.
And like I can't wait to hopefully we see him this year in May. It was like a prophet. It was like because all of that he was bullet. I'm because at the time we were there, May of 24, there was a lot of uncertainty.
Yeah,
Is the feeling and different podcasts. But I bring that up to make the point of I don't think it's a either or. It's a both and that's an important conversation. This PE has almost become a dirty word, but I think there's another way we could talk about it. It's like a third party with a different identity, a different goal, a different story, a different
yeah,
agenda.
yeah,
And are they taking the time to listen and understand? And what about the entrepreneurial spirit? What about the entrepreneurial spirit? What happens when that gets suffocated?
yeah.
What do you
If,
think?
if you don't you got to continue to cultivate that, right? I mean, you got to that culture. Speaking of culture, right? You have to continue to cultivate that. If it becomes just about
And how do you do that if you genuinely don't care? You just see people as a means to an end.
right, right, that's the
And
danger because
you're a
this is
values guy. That's why I'm asking you
yeah,
this.
that's what I mean.
You're
I
a
mean,
family
listen,
guy.
there's nothing wrong with it, right? There's nothing wrong with all that. If you're building a business and you need to exit out of it at some point or whatever, you know, is it all for naught? You just get out of it. It becomes, you made your last push. You made the last bits of dollars out of it, and now the business kind of just You know, does it continue that way? And I listen, it's a tough call.
The
There's
most interesting,
there's nothing wrong with it. It's a different mechanism to get to the end, right?
well, the most interesting thing is in the past, before all this, people just passed their businesses to their heirs,
Right.
or somebody inside the organization would have the opportunity to borrow and beg and whatever transition to run it. So it's keeping the identity of the organization continue to the next generation. As
Yeah,
our
but you also
culture,
yeah, but Jay, you also didn't have you didn't have these type of exits though. That's the problem. Like I've heard
yeah,
that
how
before.
does that corrupt
I've
or
heard,
but
yeah, I've heard that before, and I've thought about that. I'm like, why is it now? But like this private equity and this large capital coming to the table, how long has this really existed for? It's not like when my dad had an auto repair garage, you know, was private equity going out and looking for, auto repair, like
it's funny as it's put his tentacles, and I would argue as the parasite worked its way from the brain
right,
to the shoulders to the chest, it's now in the toes. Like we go down the shore and we see $10 million mansions. Who owns that
right,
house? It's like your dad's auto body shop.
right,
Why? Because well, they already took all the value from everything else.
right,
There's nothing else to destroy.
right.
I'm saying it, not you. I'm
Yeah,
just,
yeah,
this is a
yeah,
fun conversation. Now, okay, and maybe one of the lessons is like for people that are interviewing for that this is another cute way of saying it. That strategic partner, interview like as many as possible, because what are the odds that 11 out of 12 of them are just gonna have no idea what they're actually doing, but they've got access to capital and they're
right,
looking at your balance sheet
right,
and they're saying, "Oh, grandma doesn't matter, Susie doesn't matter."
right.
And I just fun like so
That's
that's
what I'm saying. I mean, it's such a hard it's an interesting discussion to have because that didn't
somebody has
these type of exits, like talking about like 5x, 10x, 15x, like these multiples that are
math doesn't math. What
it's
does that even mean?
crazy. It's just
5x,
crazy. And it didn't
20x.
exist. It didn't exist like, I don't think it existed like 20 years ago or
First
25
of
years
all,
ago.
let's think about this. You're a finance guy. A 20x means a 4% return for the buyer. So what are they borrowing to get a real return on that?
And what do they have to do to grow that? How much do they have to grow in order to get return on that money?
Yeah, so their earnings per share is like
Yeah, it's like
insane.
it's crazy.
They're the earnings is dramatically so they're buying it for a 4% dividend. So that means they have to grow it dramatically to make up for the cost
Yeah,
of
for the cost of
capital,
it, right? So I'm saying
the basic.
when you're buying it multiples, like 10x, 12x, like
To
how much
me,
how much growth is needed to get I mean, I don't know. Listen, they haven't figured
no,
out. Private
this is
equity,
just philosophy. No,
it's
I don't
not
think they have
listen,
it figured out. By the way,
they
no, I don't think they do.
I mean,
Most of
I
the
mean,
time,
private equity is making all these purchases all over the place. I can't believe that they don't have it figured out. I mean, like some of these numbers in some of these industries are
well,
crazy.
keep in mind, think about it. We've had one of the largest wealth transfers in history.
So
That's
what do you think? They're just throwing money places just to do something with it?
I
Like I
I
mean,
think it's like, yeah, I think it's akin to the last bubble, that culture.
that's interesting.
But because all the Ivy Leagues, all the smarties, and the worst thing is when you get a bunch of smart people together.
Yeah,
You get one of these because Satan or Lucifer is the Luciferian intellect. Its pride comes for the fall.
right.
Yeah. The worst thing, so like you ever heard of long-term capital management?
Yeah.
You remember that? That
Well,
they had
way back
I
when it
think
fell
they
apart.
yeah, they had 12 plus of the members, like the founding members, with IQs in the 99.99 percentile. And they had these amazing returns for a couple of years, and then boom, Russia, something happened in Russia with
Yeah,
the value of their currency, and
yeah,
now they're trying to call Buffett to bail them out, or the government came in. So no, what I think, this is my opinion of it. This is a culture war.
that's interesting.
This is an affront on the Mirarchis of the world, the everyday people that are created success, the entrepreneurial spirit, the Jays of the world, the bootstrapper that had a vision that didn't quit. Like if somebody goes and listens to our episode 12, 162, 452, they'll see our journey over all these years and like the trials, the tribulations, the struggles, the great conversations. Life happens, right? I think it's affecting all, like that's the entrepreneurial spirit. Like, yeah, how does the entrepreneur spirit change when somebody's offering them a check they didn't earn? They didn't earn it. They didn't earn it because the person giving them the check didn't even earn it because they're overpaying because somebody that,
Gave them the capital to do that.
yeah. Now, where did the person get the capital? Well, what percentage of humans are inheriting a stupid amount of this? The stats show. I mean, there's a tremendous amount of what that baby boomer wealth moving, and it's matriculating down the system into this private market. There's this huge, I think, as a consequence of the technology advancement, what the over the decadence generally, like there's lots of factors that
Sure.
the value systems change. Even look at all these RIAs, these registered investment advisories. They're
Yep.
being acquired every day. How does it affect my family's money being managed when the stewards of my capital, the rabbis, the priests of my capital, my family's capital, my retirement, they now have new bosses that are looking at me as just a number that's really sticky because I don't want to move my money. Dude, it scares the living shit out of me as a student of culture,
Sure.
as an entrepreneur trying to figure out how to create wealth and success. It scares me. If everything has been financialized, there's another person in our marriage. Like we
Yeah. It's a good way to look at it.
yeah, I'm gonna call it the new cuck entrepreneur.
Jake,
They're not
give
gonna
me
be
one
able to
sec. Jake, can you pause it for 1 second or
yeah.
pause it for 1 second?
After that comment, I should
Hold on
delete
now.
it. So what are your thoughts on this? Where do we go from here, right? It's these are just I'm the fire hydrant broke. I feel like the clown in the Kierkegaard quote that came out to let the audience know that there's a fire in the theater. And the more the louder I told everyone, the louder they're clapping.
All right.
And that's how the world is going to end to cheers and applause. I feel like the clown. It's like those are some thoughts, what does that do to our incentives as entrepreneurs when are people offering us capital they didn't even earn, that we didn't earn,
I mean,
and only looking at our vendors and our relationships as numbers, not taking into account
well, what is Jay? What is value though, right? I mean, what
what
is
is value.
it's what is value? I mean, it's what somebody's willing to pay for, right? You know what I mean? If they're willing to, if they believe what you have is worth 10x, I mean, that's on them to make that payment. You know what I mean? That's their business. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's things are worth what somebody's willing to pay, right? You know what I mean? So you're saying you didn't earn it, but didn't you really? I mean, if you build it, somebody's willing to pay you 10x for it. Why didn't you earn it? You know what I mean? Why isn't you know, how long can that my question is more is how long can that continue for? You know, how long can you continue having like it's great if you can get in the middle of this gold rush and you can if you can profit from that or benefit from that gold rush, but does that last in perpetuity? Is that going to be in perpetuity where this is going to continue? This is our new life. Is this the way it's going to be where you can build businesses and just flip them in 5 years and make, a gazillion dollars off of it? I mean, is that how is this the way it's going to be forever? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know. Does that well dry up at some point? I mean, it's here now. If you can benefit, I guess great. I don't know. It's an interesting question. It's a totally like I said. I don't think this has really been. I listen. Since the time I've come out of college, and been
I have a bias because I've interviewed so many people and I have not met one person satisfied with that outcome yet.
with
Um,
what
some type of sale. But I'd love if the
not
listener,
satisfied with being able to sell your business.
yeah, like because there's so many ways that, it's like what you just said about somebody sell and get what they've earned, you know, depending on how it's structured, read the fine print. It's
All right.
complicated. It's complicated.
It's complicated. I
And
mean,
then
it's
there's an
it's like common
identity
sense.
piece to it. It's like there's an identity piece for those true, I would argue, psychologically true entrepreneurs, like the one in 100.
All right.
They are that brand. Like then there's an identity conflict. that they'll, it leads to regret. It leads to grief. It's like there's a psychological
Yeah,
journey.
it's like losing a loved one.
Sam Walton, right? Like the great that I've studied or interviewed the children of like these like one in a million types.
Right,
Their parents, there was personal problems a lot of the time, like familial because the parent was so, but those are the types of people that change the world.
right.
Like there's a sacrifice no matter what. Choose your sacrifice. So this is more of like a philosophical, quandary we can look back in the in and think, what that was interesting. But to your question though, how long something could last, I think things are going cycles. So
So fair.
that's
Yeah,
something
I mean,
to
how
take
long?
into
Yeah, how
consideration.
long does that cycle last? You know what I mean? How long is that work? It listen, this whole the question you asked about like culture and probably this like I think that's kind of how we got into this with the do they value like the relationships and all. I think that's kind of how this conversation, the genesis of this portion of this conversation. That's how I think that's where it came from. I mean, I don't know. I don't know because I don't know that business well enough where they're buying things, they they overpay for them. There's a huge delta they have to make up now, right? Because they paid a ton for this. You have to make that money back now, and then they flip it. Like I've seen it even in healthcare. Like I've seen it with one of our clients. Like they got involved in a private equity transaction in 2017, sold again in like 3 or 4 years later for like an exorbitant multiple. Like, how long does this keep continuing? Like, how many times can you do this before it starts losing money like that? Like growth at some point is going to slow, or it's going to, it's not going to be there in order to make up these crazy multiples. I'm telling you, like they literally sold for 17 and a half times. It was a 900. It's public information now, but it was like 900 or $800 million purchase. Like
Wow.
they weren't even making that kind of money. Like how much, much revenue, what has to happen in order to pay for 700,000 or 800 million or $800 million worth of purchasing
Yeah,
power?
I'll actually bring something you mentioned about earned. I think what you said earlier about the if it's earned, you mentioned a really important point of, it's like in real estate, the price is based on what buyers are willing to pay.
Right,
Now, at the same time, I want to add something there. I would argue psychologically, from an education standpoint, just like lottery ticket people, if somebody gets 20x, let's say that I'm an entrepreneur and I'm used to
right,
living on salary and distributions of 400,000 a year,
right,
and I'm running a $70 million a year sales business. And some years I profit, the business profits 4 million. In other years it doesn't profit at all. Some years that 400K, I can distribute, I had $1 million year once, or, and I'm the entrepreneur. I've been in it 20 years. I'm thinking about my kid kind of, they talk, hey, daddy, I want to do this too. And like, I'm thinking, is that possible for me? Is it feasible? And now someone says, we're going to buy your business for, 10 times earnings. And now, I work towards getting those earnings to make it, at that best year,
yeah, right,
at that moment.
right,
So they're going to, like, let's say it's going to be all in one lump sum. It's almost like the perfect scenario
yeah, right,
for that person in theory. Like I'd rather get the lottery ticket in full instead of forever monthly.
yeah, annuity,
Okay.
right,
So now I get 60, 10 times the 60. And whatever my tax, let's leave the taxes out of it because that'll complicate it. But let's just say now I have
huge lump sum,
40 million, yeah, huge lump sum beyond comprehension, many multiples time, potentially 100 times my normal living lifestyle was built in. If it was 400K a year, it could be 100 to 150 plus times what I normally am used to living on.
right,
You ever heard of the term lifestyle creep?
yeah,
Okay, this is my argument. It's just a philosophy thing. Do I have the education, self-awareness, and advisors and community, going back to you said at the beginning, around me to make sure I don't become one of those lottery ticket millionaires that ends up worse after
Yeah.
than before. And I would
Scrambling every
argue
dollar.
this is a psychological case study or a culture case study. It's you get 700,000 entrepreneurs that go from living on 400K a year and being a foundational element of our society and their communities to 100, 200x that. Do they have the advisors to manage it? Do they have the education to pick them? Do they have the self-awareness to avoid hookers and cocaine?
Listen, I think
What do
people
you
that
think?
I think people that were in this game, and I call it a game, right? Like just entrepreneurship game or whatever you want to call it. I think people that have made it or have tested the waters, have gone through it. I think they have, I would believe they have the ability to self-control, the ability of self-control and to be able to manage that without blowing themselves off within 2 years. You know what I mean? Just because so much discipline was needed to get to that level of success in like doing your own thing. I got to imagine they have, there's got to
I'm
be
I'm laughing because
a level
uh,
of discipline.
it's a fun conversation. I think like we'd have to look at the divorce rates if there's a correlation connection between private equity coming into the society. You
Did they
know,
cause this too? No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, I've got, how many new marriages were created recently after a liquidity event?
Yeah.
I just think of like, my 80-year-old self sitting there thinking, I'll get out someday.
I'll be out.
I've got few options, because I couldn't embrace that fight over the kitchen silverware or whatever,
Yeah,
who's
yeah,
gonna
yeah.
clean the dishes.
Yeah, dude. I don't know.
It's just a fun conversation. I mean, I'm having fun at least. I feel
Yeah,
bad
no,
for you.
good thought. Good food for thought.
What are you most excited about in 2025, in the spirit of the entrepreneurship, outside of the check 10 times earnings?
Yeah, which would be nice.
Congratulations, by the way. If
Yeah, by
anyone's
the way,
listening
here's a
to this,
check for 10 times.
Ant is exactly who you want to be participating with in his success.
Yeah.
If you're one of those parasitic type people.
What am I looking for?
What
Forward
are you
to?
looking forward to?
I got a couple of things on the horizon right now that I'm working on with a partner of mine. Actually, he's going to be coming to the office this week. We're in the process of discussing developing a new insurance product. I'll leave it at that. So we have done some preliminary discussions with some carriers that we work with, large carriers, and it seems to have been a hit. So the devil's in the detail now. Probably need to get some IT on it or IP. Um, so that's going to be interesting. We'll see how that develops. That could potentially be one of these exits that we're talking about. Um, so we'll see how that goes. That's it's been started already. We started the conversation. We've been doing a lot of our own due diligence towards the end of last year, probably fourth quarter last year. We started this, and we are had conversations with some insurance carriers. One really big one. It's a Berkshire Hathaway company. They seem to be interested
Right.
in potentially partnering up. We just have to get our ducks in a row here. So we're going to see how this kind of like unfolds over the next little while. But that's pretty exciting on a professional note. Um, you know, growth and getting closing prospects and something that's always exciting. Yeah, that's always a natural excitement when you're closing clients and whatnot and doing the right thing. So that's pretty much, yeah, for right now, it's kind of what we got.
What should entrepreneurs know about their insurance in like because there's been a lot of catastrophes, there's a lot of you know, has that affected like when we moved to Florida that I mean, it's a wholly different insurance, like the cost of house insurance and
Yeah,
all that
sure.
stuff. It's What do I need to know as a potential customer going into that prospecting, looking for that insurance partner? What would be your advice, you know, on how to get the best deal without putting one? Because okay, where I'm going with this is if I try to pay the least, I'm thinking out loud. If I try to pay the least amount, I'm thinking about the company that would underwrite me at the least amount. If they might they it's the same kind of concept. Try to get the business without profiting. Hopefully I'll profit someday. If I understand insurance at all, I think I do a little bit. It's, we profit on the buy too.
Right.
We're profiting on the buy. Like,
Mhm.
so the best price deal isn't necessarily the best deal for the customer, I would think. If the
I mean, listen,
or no.
I think the more complex like if you're buying auto insurance, right? We all know what that's about, right? It's like it depends on the complexity of it. Dude. Honestly, it's a very hard. Is buying the cheap always the best? I mean, listen, if you're looking for like a really basic commodity, like maybe that works out for you. You know what I mean? But the more complex these things get, like we're dealing with doctors and we're dealing with like practices and they're doing things differently and how they do this and how they do that. If you're looking to buy like malpractice insurance for a medical office, it's not about how cheap it is. You know what I mean? You gotta like there's these contracts are really long and they're really long for a reason because they're written by a lot of attorneys and there's a lot of nuances in there. And you kind of like just because it's cheap doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's hard to say categorically, cheaper is not the best all time. Maybe if you're buying auto insurance or home insurance and you can compare apples to apples real easy, one, two, three. But the more complex the situation, the more careful you have to be with the pricing of it. Like just because it's cheaper, is it better? No. I mean, that's obviously not, I don't believe that to be the case because there's a reason why it's cheaper normally when things get more complex. You know what I mean? There's a reason for it. There's a lack of coverage here. There's lack of this. There's lack of that. Whatever the case might be. They don't allow you to do this. They don't allow you to do that. So like I said, the more complex the situation is, the more careful you have to be in that purchase. You know what I mean? Like if you're going to go buy a set of roller skates versus buying, a Bugatti, right? You got to be a little more careful about that purchase.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that's my answer to it. I mean, is cheaper better? I mean, it can be, I guess. It can be okay if you're dealing with something that's not really important. If you're dealing with something that's really important, the more important the issue gets, the more you have to be cautious about
Well,
that.
now you bring up a great point, or I think, a great wisdom in this response. Um, the more complex, the more attention needed.
Right, of course.
But with that attention comes experience, wisdom, talent, like dedication.
Sure,
And I don't want my partners not dedicated, even if they have wisdom, talent, and
sure,
experience. I don't want my partners wise and experienced and talented or wise and or experienced but not wise. You see where I'm
right.
going? Or,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
you know, wise and experienced but not talented but dedicated.
Right,
And that's, I think, where our audience can think about the question of value and values. Somewhere between value, wisdom, experience, engagement, attention, dedication. Like, I could trust Ant's going to get it done for us. We have this, massive office network of doctors' offices
right,
that is saving lives every day, that things are going to not work out. And we can't go out of business because we didn't have the right insurance,
right,
because then people are going to die.
right,
So I need to trust that Ant is going to be dedicated and have the experience and the resources and the wisdom and the talent and skills to get it done. If I believe that, that will be worth more because it's all right. It's a bet.
sure, of course.
So, like, what's the intersection of values or value and values? Like, the values is the character piece.
Sure.
The and this goes back to yeah, the earlier part of the conversation is like if we disincentivize ourselves to sacrifice for our customers, to serve our customers with capital,
Mhm. It devalues it almost.
it separates us from our customers and separates
Fair point.
value from what's valued. What's valued? The capital.
Right.
The capital's has a
Value, right? Sure.
value. It's a currency. It's like I look at it from a very like less of a number standpoint, more of a humanistic like energy standpoint. What is the dollar? It's like if I give you a dollar, I value whatever you're going to do, whatever you're going to do something for me. But when you're doing something for me, you're not doing something else. Like your thoughts and your emotions and you're trading your time and your space for me now.
Mhm.
Like if you're giving me a dollar, you're getting me. I get the dollar for future J. Ant gets present J. I give you a dollar. I get present Ant. You get future Ant because you're going to benefit from them. So like
Right.
the value currency is valued based on past and potential actions. And like, what are the consequences? I know I'm going like super cerebral right now, but I think it's the nuances of what you just said that matters. It's the values and the value have a relationship. And what happens when, like, what if I stop the podcast because somebody invests into it, like, or buys the whole thing, and then I just, and then I stop doing it. I'm the reason it's great. This is a calling for me. So what value? It's like I'm attached to this. There's no this is it.
There's no podcast without Jay.
Yeah, and there shouldn't be.
Right.
There shouldn't be. The, it's priceless. There's no price.
Here's the question.
Yeah.
Maybe you want to address this, or maybe you don't want to address this. If somebody's going to write a fat check for you, a nice fat eight-figure check, how deep is your commitment to not accept it?
See you later.
Yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. That's what
Well,
I'm saying.
the best way to end the show, right? It's
Yeah,
like
right.
all that for that, you piece of garbage.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
This is like I feel like Jesus and the Pharisees.
Yeah. What's the what that yeah, that's
No, I
like
mean, all jokes aside, um, I think that's kind of my point in the thing the with greater resources comes and respect of the community comes greater responsibility.
all right.
So it's like I hope to be the person that I'm gonna get go back to work the next day. Like I didn't do it because I needed a vacation. I already took that. I was a good parent, you know, citizen, so on.
Right.
Which I'm an extremist, so I'm not like that's not I'm not that mature yet. I don't
Right.
have that figured out. But I would feel a call to and would wanna I want to be the person that can burden that responsibility and go find some purpose in something, either that thing or the next, would want to keep going. Now, obviously, when you get that capital, I don't have control. I'm not in control.
Right. Well,
Not mine
obviously,
anymore.
you have to give something up, right? For that.
And isn't that life, right? So, yeah, to answer your, see you later.
That's my point. What's the dedication to it? Because somebody writes a big fat check. If I was going to write a check and you saw it right in front of your face and say you can take this right now, I mean, that's your commitment to that has to be strong. in order
Well,
not
I
to
think
accept
that
anything.
brings up an even more interesting conversation about proactive and reactive. It's like, well, what's my plan? Why am I doing what I'm doing? What am I doing?
Maybe the answer is to make your family comfortable. If that's your
What,
answer,
but was I Carnegie and I engineered the whole thing and played dumb? Like Carnegie engineered his exit where JP Morgan thought that he was the one, but Carnegie wanted him to
yeah, to take them out, right?
he wanted him to say, "Hey, here."
Yeah.
Like I think there's an important conversation for our listeners around vision, strategy, purpose. Like how many people listening, they haven't planned, they haven't met, they're not thinking steps ahead. They may just they're someone asked them versus them asking someone. Like
Right.
they're not we're not being proactive in that.
Right.
I would say being reactive in anything has gotten me in a hell of a lot of trouble in my life. So I would want the answer to that question would depend on what's my vision, what's our mission, how do we think we're getting there, who's participating, what do we even do? What is this? What are we doing? What is the value?
And don't forget, you can even by accepting if you accepted those kind of checks or whatever, you can still do a lot of good with that too, right? There's a lot that can be done with that. It doesn't have to be, you know, you got this business and I can only do it with this business. You can still do other things with it. You know what I mean? That could be the stepping stone for the next iteration of whatever you're trying to do. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
you
my
can't be
next
going,
company is called Culture Doesn't Matter.
oh yeah.
So
And
they
again,
buy this, and then the next one is Culture
yeah,
Doesn't
it
Matter.
doesn't really
And they're
matter.
competing with.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. So, you could probably it's maybe it's just a stepping stone. Somebody does make a nice offer. Maybe it's meant to be. You're supposed to utilize it for something else.
And what do you think, if we put a title to this or a theme, what's your takeaway from this conversation today for our listeners, who decided not to tune out 40 minutes ago?
Uh, Value. Find a way to create it.
If you're listening to this podcast, share this with somebody you want to give agita for the day or a friend you care about that needs to contemplate these types of conversations. They're in that position of thoughtfulness around the future of their business, their family, their life. Please leave us a review in the Culture Matters podcast. And where can people follow you fastest? They want to do business with you and your organization.
Um, they can get me on my email if they want to do that.
Please, please.
It's Anthony ANTHONY M as in Mary at JM as in Mary Patton PATTON as in Nancy.com. Anthony M at jmpatton.com.
If you're listening to this, I would get with Ant. He's a great advisor, friend, steward. And please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast, and we will see you next time. Thanks, brother.
Thanks, man.